Guadalcanal, February 8, 1943. Saipan, July 17, 1944. Iwo Jima, February 23, 1945. All were battles in which the Navajo Code Talkers, a new unit created during World War II, fought. Without these men dispersed among the various Marine Corps, the success of the United States in the Pacific Theater, if achieved, would have been a much longer, bloodier process. The U.S. declared war on Japan December 8, 1941. To aid the security of communications, the most sophisticated coding technologies were used, yet the Japanese broke every single code constructed. The U.S., desperate for a code to withstand Japanese code-breaking attempts, implemented an idea first proposed by Philip Johnston, a World War I veteran. He grew up learning the Navajo language on the reservation because his father was a missionary there.
Navajo was an oral language. It was not a written language. It was not a language that they used other than in oral form. And so therefore it was a bit of a double-edged sword. It gave it a kind of complexity in terms of how it was spoken that in English we don't have.
Johnston pitched General James E. Jones on using the Navajo language as a code. The commander replied, "In all the history of warfare, that has never been done. No code, no cipher is completely secure from enemy interception. We change our codes frequently for this reason," but agreed to the idea, asking for 200 bilingual Navajos. He only received 30. Later, this number was reduced to 29. After the success of the original 29, almost 400 more joined the Marines, following in their footsteps. But why did these men go to war for the country that had sent them on the long walk to new reservation land in 1864 and forced them to speak English in government schools? Dan Key enlisted because he liked the uniform. For Jack Jones, we did it for our land, we did it for our people, for the good of the people, for the security purpose, and for the freedom of America and its allies. For Keith Little, it's an automatic choice to defend your land, your people, your loved ones, your home. The first 29 were sent through normal Marine training at Fort Gwinget, which they passed with flying colors. They were then taken to Camp Pendleton.
And that's where we learned that out of our astonishments that the Navajos were being used, Navajo language is being used as a code.
After receiving a crash course in cryptography, the original 29 developed a code.
The Navajo code was put together so that even a Navajo would not understand what the message was all about.
Most of the code was actually developed by the Navajo themselves, using mainly the Navajo language as it existed, and then improvising as necessary.
By the end of the war, over 450 words were in the code. The first battlefield test of the code came in 1942 at the Battle of Guadalcanal in the Solomon Islands. At first, the code talkers were merely used for battle and as runners between the front lines and Command Central, but as the Marines pushed further against the Japanese reinforcements, the code talkers were used more and more as the practicality of other methods declined.
It had a dramatic reduction in Marine casualties because right on the spot, Marines could quickly and reliably call the code talker to the tactical radio set, ask for close air support, ask for naval gunfire, ask for an emergency resupply of ammunition, and at the other end, without any question as to the authenticity of the transmission, that it was coming from American Marines.
Before their worth was accepted, however, Lieutenant Hunt, the signal officer at Guadalcanal, challenged the code talkers to transmit and decode a message faster than the best code machine they had, which took about 4 hours. William McCabe, a Navajo code talker, decoded the message sent in 2 minutes and 30 seconds, proving the value of the code. After a successful campaign on Guadalcanal, the use of code talkers spread through all 6 Marine divisions, who used them in later battles like Iwo Jima and Saipan. At Saipan, a group of soldiers in Japanese-held territory were bombed by the U.S. They radioed for the bombardment to stop, but it did not, since the Japanese could fake transmissions easily. After repeated messages, the unit was asked if they had a code talker. The code talker hurried to the radio and spoke in code. The bombardment stopped immediately. Iwo Jima, the bloodiest battle in the Pacific Theater, occurred on an 8-square-mile island. Over 100 code talkers were active, most in the third wave to hit the beaches, giving them a much better chance for survival than they otherwise would have had. Because they were trying to protect us, we couldn't be replaced like some of the men with general skills. said an unidentified code talker.
We were going to hit the beach. The officer says, you better talk to your makers. Whatever religious faith you have.
Tom Jones remembers, "We hit the beach again on February 19th. Everything was floating around. Bodies first day we landed. The beach was pretty sandy, stinky. You couldn't hardly climb up, you slid back down. It was too cold, windy. You had to use the radio all the time. You stood by it day and night. We used everything we had. Mortar shells, combat, shooting, all kinds of tunnels. There were all kinds of booby traps. Even the rain couldn't get out of it. Despite these hardships and horrors, the Marines fought to win the crucial airstrip, the last island before Japan. In this battle, the Navajo were invaluable. The entire operation was directed by Navajo code. During the 2 days following the initial landings, I had 6 Navajo radio nets working around the clock. They sent and received over 800 messages without an error. Were it not for the Navajo code talkers, the Marines never would have taken Iwo Jima," said Major Howard Connor of the 5th Marine Division. The code talkers relayed casualties and orders despite the Japanese attempts to jam the radios. They would sing, shout, or bang pots in order to disrupt our rhythm, but they never succeeded, said one code talker. 5 days after landing on the beaches of Iwo Jima, the first flag was raised on Mount Suribachi. Teddy Draper was the code talker to relay the message to headquarters, bringing great joy, but the battle continued for another 26 days. The second flag raising occurred shortly thereafter, producing the memorable image captured by Joe Rosenthal and memorialized in Arlington at the Marine Corps War Memorial. March 26, 1945 was the day the island was secured, bringing an end to the Navajo code talkers' role in World War II. After the war, many struggled to readjust to life at home, whether from nightmares or a downtrodden economy. War is cruelty. It leaves its mark. It scars the soldier. The ghosts of war are often confronted in another war on the home front when the veteran returns, writes Laura Toa. But for those suffering after the war, such as Jimmy Begay, ceremonies were performed. They put on white corn pollen. Then they say, "Don't bother you," like imagination. Sometime you start dreaming about it. They say, "Don't come to you." It didn't to me. Prayer was an important part of the Navajo's war experience. Before men left to fight, there was a ceremony as well called the Blessing Way. For Tom Jones, a medicine man performed the ceremony. "You will return this way. No matter how difficult it will be and what you will encounter, I want you to come back," he said as he sang for me. Under the threat of prison, the code talkers kept silent about the critical role they played in winning the Pacific Theater. Only in 1969 did the U.S. government end the silence of the Navajo code talkers. In 1982, Reagan declared August 14th to be National Navajo Code Talker Day. Despite this recognition, it was only in 2001 that the code talkers and their families were awarded gold and silver medals for their service. Despite a lack in initial recognition, after the unveiling of the role of the code talkers, many interviews, school visits, and storytellings occurred, along with the founding of the Navajo Code Talkers Association, memorializing the code talkers' work for generations to come, much like the statue of raising the flag on Iwo Jima. "You saved all the Marines in your group, and you saved the rest of them too," one family member told a code talker. "I wonder how much a person is worth. What we defended there, how much does a person cost?" wondered Tom Jones. Bill Banning, a World War II historian, wondered, "Who in the world can put a price tag on the lives saved as a result of that secure communication?"